The situation is not fine, friends. We have so many people out there saying how wonderful everything is, and yet as we go to the grocery store, we're seeing that things are absolutely not fine. Most Americans are struggling to make ends meet. Most Americans are not able to keep up with the rate of inflation. And we have a lot of data points out there that we need to talk about. We're going to talk about just how bad things are right now. And if you're like, I already get it, I already understand how bad things are, but to understand how it is for everyone else, okay? So if it's bad for you, if you're the only one, that's one thing, right? But when it's everybody, you realize that this is part of a bigger problem. This isn't just a me problem. This is an everybody problem. And when you start hearing some of these numbers, you're going to realize it is not just you. It's not just you. You're not the only one struggling here. Everybody is. And this is not an individual problem. This is a systemic problem. And this is a government failure problem. This is a markets failure problem. We have abuses within the system that have made the whole system to be unfair, and it doesn't work anymore. How do I know this? Well, welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. If you haven't joined us already, make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already subscribed. But let's throw some numbers at you here. 37% of credit card holders have either maxed out or come close, according to, this is from a Bankrate and YouGov survey. They surveyed thousands of Americans. It was 3,600 Americans. And the question was, have you maxed out a credit card, or have you come close to maxing out a credit card? This was after they already sifted them for, do you have a credit card, right? So of those who have credit cards, 37% now have maxed out a credit card or come close. That is a truly frightening number, right? This is not, I mean, have you seen what interest rates are out there? If you're struggling enough to have to put stuff on a credit card, can you imagine actually paying the interest on that? That's a big problem, friends. Big problem. And those numbers have soared by 20% just in the last 2 years. This is becoming a huge, huge problem that nobody wants to talk about. We have credit card debt going through the roof just overall. We're now at $1.1 trillion, $1.14 trillion dollars in credit card debt. This is not just any kind of debt. This is not mortgages. This is all credit card debt. So you take the 30%, which is roughly what a lot of credit card companies, I think, is doing right now. I think it's roughly about 30%. It used to be like 25%, 20, 25%. Now it's like at least 30%. 30% of 1.1 trillion. That's a lot of money. And that's just money being paid on interest, not on buying things that you actually need, but rather just paying these greedy scam banks out there, right? That's record high interest being paid on record high credit card debt. Now that's actually from the second quarter, that number. That number has actually gone up significantly since then in the third quarter, which ended in September. But we don't have those numbers yet, so we have to go with these numbers. And it's not just the United States. It's everywhere around the world, too. You look over at the UK. 633,000 businesses are on, quote, the brink of collapse. These are companies that are basically saying, we're not sure if we're going to be able to stay in business this coming year because of situations we have right now. Now, the UK government out there has just slashed heating benefits for the elderly. going into the winter. They have announced that they're going to raise taxes. So you can just tell which end of the spectrum is in power over there. And the fact that they have hundreds of their staffers that are literally employees of the UK government are actually in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and others, and Michigan, and states inside the United States campaigning for Special K. Yeah, they're employees of the UK government. I can't even get beyond that. And I'm sorry, I was stewing on this one. I was stewing on this one today as I was hiking, and my thoughts were like, when Trump gets into office, he needs to remember this. He needs to remember who these people are. That the UK government, the Labour Party over there, which actually runs the government, they actively campaigned against him. And it's just like when he gets into office, he needs to remove all special benefits that they're getting, period. If you're a foreign government and you decide to jump in on another country's election and your person loses, there should be consequences to that. That's why you don't do that. That's why you stay out of other countries' politics. Anyway, so the UK sticking their nose in our business, hiking up taxes over there because that always works to help get the economy going. 633,000 of their businesses are about to go under. Yikes. That's a 32% increase, by the way, as opposed to the same time last year. That is a massive increase. If you want to destroy your economy, all you have to do is get Special K or the labor guys in. Just get the furthest leftist people you can, and you are sure to crash your economy. In the U.S., I get it. A whole bunch of you guys are like, well, what about the U.S.? We already kind of reported this earlier this week, but only a handful of companies are projected this third quarter that ended September to have a higher income. So basically these companies, very few of these companies, only the very top companies actually have higher income this past quarter than they did back in second quarter. So things are definitely not moving in the right direction, and you have the stock market still out there going, the world is, all sunshine and roses. Well, it's not. And when you look at the damage that's being done to the U.S. economy, like I keep stating again and again, we just had these job numbers that came out this past month, right? And it was just like, wow, that's actually pretty good. Well, where'd that come from? Well, the government hired more people. And you say, well, that wasn't all the numbers, was it? It was basically all the numbers. Basically, the only reason why we had a blowout number back in September was the fact that they hired all of these people. The federal government hired all these people. And that's one way to get the unemployment rate down, is just the government hires more people with money that they've printed. Speaking of our government, this past year that ended, we just had our fiscal year for the federal government just ended. This past year, 23% of all the revenue that came into the government, all the taxes, all the tariffs, all the money that came into the U.S. government, 23% of it went to just pay the interest on the national debt. And looking forward to this year that we're just going into now, this fiscal year for our federal government, we're looking at probably paying about 30% of all revenues coming into the government. 30% is just going to go just to pay interest on the federal debt. That's bad. And that assumes that nothing bad happens. If we have a 2008 type crisis where basically the tax revenue dropped by 15%, that's what happened in 2009, and it didn't recover until 2011. It didn't recover into 2011. 2010, it was still down. 2011, it finally got back up to where it was. So if we have that type of crisis, this next year, we would not be looking at 30% of the revenues that come into the federal government going to pay just interest. It would be 35%. Now, when you go from 15-ish% of the revenues going to interest to 35% in just 2 years, that's the death spiral. That's the death spiral that everyone starts going, maybe we should charge more interest to loan this, this entity more money. We want to loan them money, but they might not pay us back. And so we need to charge a higher interest. The U.S. federal government has been been known as the gold standard. The gold standard. It's not as good as gold, but it's basically the idea is that this is the most dependable government. They will definitely pay you back. But when you start looking at the numbers, no, that's not so true anymore. So we've been getting so low of interest rates. Our government has been borrowing at practically negative interest rates. When you look at inflation compared to the interest rates you get for a savings bond, yeah, we're basically selling our bonds at negative interest rates. People are paying for the privilege of parking their money in savings bonds. But that's about to change. That's about to change. We're going to get another credit downgrade for the U.S. government. Almost certainly is going to happen in the next number of months. And when that happens, people are going to really start asking the question, can the U.S. federal government even pay back the debts that it has? And when that happens, the interest rate's going to go up. And as it goes up, that 35% becomes irrelevant. Then it becomes 40%. Then it becomes 50%. Then it becomes 70%, 100%. And as it spirals upwards, people realize how much of a Ponzi scheme this whole thing is. So Americans can't pay their bills. That's why they're using their credit cards. They can't afford groceries. They can't afford to pay their mortgages. They're defaulting on their cars at record levels. People are losing their cars because they took out way too much loans. They can't pay back the payments. The payments are too high. They can't afford it. And you're telling me that everything is fine out there. Well, if you are a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., and you keep getting these massive pay increases, the wealthiest zip codes in the United States are the counties, or the zip codes around Washington, D.C. Not in Washington, D.C., because there's too much fentanyl there. There's too much boomstick crime there. Yeah, friends, the actual Washington, D.C. that's run by Congress is not some sort of utopia. It is actually a hellscape. But the counties and zip codes around Washington, D.C., where all the bureaucrats live, those are the wealthiest counties and the wealthiest zip codes in the United States. Because the bureaucrats that work for federal government make so much money. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And they have their friends in Washington, D.C. to keep voting them more and more money. If you've ever seen the movies The Hunger Games or read the books, it's just like that. It's literally happening. These blue-haired freaks in Washington, D.C. are running our lives. And they're telling us how wonderful everything is. When we are suffering and we are dealing with the realities that they're creating, America is turning into the Hunger Games. And the Capitol is riding us into the ground. Americans can't even afford Halloween candy this year. With chocolate prices up the way they are, not to mention just how much the markups that these companies are putting up. they are charging more and more and more and more. These conglomerate companies realize that they can't sell more food, and so what they're doing is they're just jacking the margin on all of the food up. That's why the difference between generic food and, you know, like Great Value and stuff like that is down here, and the name brand stuff just keeps going up and up and up. Have you seen how much soda goes for these days? I know we're not supposed to drink that stuff, but some of us enjoy our Coca-Cola every so often, right? The prices on sodas are just crazy, absolutely crazy. And the funny thing is over here in Spain, I can see how much the American jacking up of the prices for Coca-Cola have gone, whereas in Spain we haven't seen anything like that because they don't have the market share. They're still trying to get everyone to drink their Coca-Cola. It's absolutely absurd how much Americans are paying for Coca-Cola when I can pay a lot less here in Spain. It's the same stuff. It's the same stuff. It's better quality stuff. It's got less chemicals and less garbage in it than in the United States. It's amazing how much stuff they're allowed to put in it in the U.S. There are so many different chemicals that are banned here in Europe that you can go ahead and shove into food over in the United States. They're just literally poisoning us because they don't care. They want to save a few bucks here and there. But these companies are jacking up all these margins just to make a quick buck, and it's at our expense. You know that there's a problem. You know that there are problems around problems. And the simple fact is that it's these elites that are running these companies in a way that they don't care how it impacts anyone. And these elites that are running our government, that they don't care how that impacts everyone there either. At the end of the day, we're going to fix this thing. We're going to fix this thing, but it's going to be people like you and I. It's not going to be a politician. It's not going to be new people in Washington, D.C. Hopefully they help, but it's going to be people like you and me. And you need to come to terms with the fact that someone else isn't going to save us. We're going to have to save us. And it's going to be a difficult road. It's going to be a difficult process. And hopefully we got some friends in Washington, D.C. that will help us take back our country. But friends, at the end of the day, we got to do it for ourselves. And we saw what these guys that went to Washington, D.C. back in 2016, you saw what they came up against. It was just the whole swamp came after them. And last time, we didn't have their back as we needed to have. This time, we need to have their back. And hopefully they have ours, because we need to take back these institutions, cut down the federal government. We need to cut back 75-80% of the federal government needs to be gone, because it just exists to fund itself and to create more power for itself. You know there's a problem. I know there's a problem. We're talking about it here on this channel. We're talking about it throughout the internet. We have some spaces where we can talk a little more frankly, and people are on board, right? I mean, we've seen it across the nation. People are on board with taking our country back. Well, hopefully you are too, and we're going to do what we can. We're going to do what we can, and that's what it's all about. All of us doing a little bit. All of us doing what we can where we are. All right, friends, there is hope. Things are bad, but there is hope. And we have opportunities to move forward, and we're going to move forward together. All right, friends, hopefully you have a good rest of your day. This hits you in the afternoon, but just be thinking about what can you do in your community. What places around you can you impact? All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.